What did this episode's guest learn about recruiting from the Church of Scientology? Stick around and you'll find out. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Game Industry Job Hunt, episode 12. Thanks for being here, really appreciate it. My name's Joe, I'm your host. I'm going to keep this brief. Today we're talking to a friend of mine, Anna Moss. Anna is a recruiter, among other things, but more than anything else, she's just a joy to talk to. She has some great stories, really great background in recruiting and in the tech and gaming industry, so I'm excited for you guys to hear that. Really quick before we do, reminder, leaving a review on the podcast app of your choice is one of the best things that you can do to help the show for free. We don't have a Patreon, currently at least. Hopefully that's in the cards one day, but we don't have a Patreon. We don't have any kind of paid tiers or anything like that. It's just throwing out information for people and sharing what we can to help people out. So if you don't mind, take the opportunity to leave a 5-star review, type out a little something nice. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. Hey, the host of this show is really great, awesome voice, really funny guy, something along those lines. If you can find the time to do that, it would be greatly appreciated. Okay, with all that stuff out of the way, let's chat with Anna Moss. We are live, hot mics.
Great.
Yeah, so listen, I really appreciate you doing this again, Anna. It's really good to have you. Like I was saying here before we hit record, there's a lot of just really great content that I think that you're putting out on LinkedIn right now that's been super helpful and informative to me. And so that's why I wanted to get you on as soon as possible, just because, I'm sure I'm not the only one that will find it useful. So thank you again for being here. And just to, kick things off, tell us a little bit about your background and how you sort of got into gaming and tech recruiting.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me. It's very
nice.
Cool. So a little bit about myself and my background. So I started in recruitment a few years ago, and I started from life science. It was very boring. I could only do that for like about half a year. But I've learned so much from my hiring manager back in the day, and he was training us very intensively. And I was very grateful for that. He taught me a lot of bad things that are ethical things. I'm not going to mention his name, but everyone could calculate it. Go back to my LinkedIn. A lot of unethical things that recruiters can do in the agency, a lot of tricks and tips, etc. I'm not going to get into details again, but you can ask me separately about that. And after that, I thought that I really like recruitment from the perspective of what it actually supposed to be, not just agency, but internally as well. And then I decided to switch industries because I thought it depends on the industry where you're working and people that you're working with. The ethical aspect of it is driven by the vibe of the industry, right? And I always really liked games, and I played a lot of games since I was a child. I had PC and I'm Russian originally, which is weird, since I was about 5 years old. I was using my mom's PC, and it was amazing, very basic games like Pink Panther, but I loved it, okay? Don't blame me.
No. I mean, hey, we've all got to start somewhere, right? And I think
exactly.
Pink Panther is more than respectable, honestly. I mean, yeah.
Thanks. I loved it. I replayed it recently. It was amazing.
we like what we like, right? I mean, you like what you like.
Yeah,
it's just the way it is.
Exactly. So I started working in games. I applied to a position with Datascope, and they hired me on the spot, basically, although I was like an hour late. It was hilarious, but they loved me. I loved them. I started working with them, and because they're so established, they had literally their hands in like everything all across the industry globally. So US, Asia, like both continents in US, Asia is a continent, even Australia, Eurasia, UK, basically, obviously, as their main touch point. It was amazing because I had a chance to work with so many different studios, with so many different things, but I was working only in programming. And within programming, I loved gameplay the most, and especially AI programmers and machine learning programmers. We actually worked with one of the AI companies. I'm not going to mention it. I'm not sure if Datascope allows me to. That actually became right now really popular after ChatGPT and OpenAI boom. But they're based in London, and now they're very famous. Back in the day, it was very difficult to recruit for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed a lot. And then I switched to in-game to do a little bit of art recruitment. And at that point, I was moving to Scotland, so I had to find a new job here in Scotland that is remote. And now I'm working at IA Connection, working remotely. When I started working at IA Connection, it was a bit tricky because I could continue working in games, and I still do that. But I'm the only person at IA Connection, so I have to be careful because Carbon and Finch company that owns AI Connection is actually Microsoft consultancy in D365. It's
Okay.
ERP. It's not very
Okay.
interesting. But they also have AI products, so I have to work with AI roles, D365 roles, and also with games roles. So I kind of have to do multiple millions of things all at the same time.
Yeah, so you've got your fingers in a bunch of different
Uh-huh.
pies, as we say, right?
Yep,
That's
exactly.
awesome. We were talking before we hit record here, about just again your LinkedIn content, and I always find it
Yeah.
really interesting and full. I think the thing that really put you on my radar was the hashtag animosity post that you do on LinkedIn.
Yep.
For those that don't know, as your profile puts it, you expose toxic practices in recruiting, which which to me, honestly, I feel like I've more or less been lucky in the in my career of I can't really think of any experiences that I would classify as toxic with a recruiter, aside from just slightly rude stuff like ghosting you or not getting back, or even
Yeah.
I did have one on my recent job just not show up for a call. Like we had a call set, we had talked back and forth, and then he literally ghosted on
Wow.
the interview, which I thought was really weird. I think most people have run into something like that, some level of toxicity or just at least slightly rude behavior from a recruiter. Talk about that a little bit, kind of, what was it about the ethics angle of recruiting that made you feel like, hey, this is something that I really need to talk about, and this is something that I feel like needs to be at the forefront of everyone's minds?
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you so much for asking. Yeah, I love animosity as a hashtag. I think the first person who came up with it, I wasn't doing any posts about unethical recruitment or anything like that back in the day when I was working with programmers. But I had amazing programmer Mark. He was working at that point at Ballistic Moon. They were shipping the Quarry on PC basically because originally it's console game, and I was helping him with his job search, and he pointed out that my name sounds like animosity, basically, right?
It's so
I
good.
had
It's perfect.
like I had no clue. Okay, this is not my original surname. This is my partner's surname. So I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah,
and
so
then
you like inherited this
yeah,
and again, as someone
yeah,
named Joe King, and I'm not
yeah,
joking here, I can fully speak on great name puns, and you
yeah.
have a fine one. You really do.
Yeah,
It's good.
yeah, same, likewise. Yeah, exactly. And then I think he phrased it as in like, if you do have animosity in your job search, you should contact her. And I was like, that's so cool. But then obviously when I switched from Datascope and from in-game where I was under a brand and I was under obviously someone else's command, right? Before that I was working in security, so for me it's kind of like I should hold myself off a little bit, like stop,
Right.
don't be
Yeah.
like don't expose anyone, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
It's like working in AAA basically, right? You don't want to say too much on social media because it's going to come back to the brand.
It always does. Always.
Exactly. So when I started working at IA Connection, because ultimately I'm in charge now and I can build my own branding now without being scared, I've started without any hashtag exposing things that I just generally didn't like what recruiters do, for example, and I can see it from the backstage, as I mentioned before, when I was trained in recruitment originally, and it was like 4 weeks training. I've never heard of that one before in any other recruitment agencies. If recruiters are listening to me, you usually just go there and they tell you, okay, do recruitment. Okay. Maybe it's like a week training, very basic, but
Yeah.
I was intensively trained, explained everything from like 9 till 5. We were sitting there with presentation. He was amazing, explained everything to us, our manager. And I knew about all of these things, and I knew people are doing it because I can see they doing it, or we discussing it, or we encountering situations where if two agencies are working alongside, you start noticing things between each other when you talk to a client. For example, speculative submission without candidate's consent, right? So, for example, candidate is telling me, one agency, that oh yeah, I've never applied to the studio. Then I submit his documents, his CV, everything, all information to the studio, and studio says, no, but like we already received that from another agency. And I'm saying, well, you couldn't, because candidates said they never send anything to you and they never asked anyone to send it to you. And then they tell you the name of the agency that they also work with. And then you go back to candidate and you say, well, it's that agency. And candidate says, yeah, I've never asked them to send anything. Like last time I spoken to them like half a year ago. It's just
Wow.
they done it without my consent, basically. But that's it. They are doing it because they're trying to fill the roles as soon as possible. Okay,
It's a numbers game,
race.
right? It's a numbers
Yeah,
game.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So usually it doesn't go as far to a candidate, or if it does, we kind of try to minimize the damage. We're not going to them and saying, you know what this agency did. Like, we're just trying to sort it out with the client, right? And if they want to, they can take it up with the agency. Normally they don't, because they don't want to ruin relationship, but they take the notice of it. So things like that, for example, this is the best example I think that I have. But also, obviously, other unethical practices is discussing personal data with other recruitment agents or with people who you don't have terms and conditions with, gossiping about candidates, or there are candidates that had difficult life situations, right? For example, criminal records or anything like that. And they getting stigmatized because of this, or they had an allegation that never actually came through. It went to media, but nobody actually knows if it happened. There was no court case, there was no hearing, nothing actually came out of it, but there was a lot of stuff going on Twitter. But now that person is basically stigmatized in a lot of various agencies, and they're putting it on the system saying, oh, you should be careful with this candidate.
Oh, wow.
And in reality, no, you shouldn't, because that happened like 10 years ago, and nothing came out of it. It was just allegations and a lot of gossip, but that affects people's lives, right?
Yeah,
So things
absolutely.
like that's how animosity came to life, basically, me gathering all of this stuff around me, and then I started exposing it. I started exposing it without hashtag, and I wasn't doing it like, I was trying to hide names and things like that and doing a proper stories and posts on LinkedIn. It didn't go well. A lot of people started tagging that specific person that I'm talking about, and like I would get a lot of hate for it, because they would be like, how dare you, they're amazing, or this person is amazing. I was like, okay, I can't do that. I can't like
Whoops.
openly either
Yeah.
say, or like semi openly say things about people or companies or agencies. So I was like, okay, not a problem. I'm going to just make jokes about it, okay? I'm going to make like funny videos about bad interview experiences without mentioning anyone's names, or I'm going to make a post without mentioning anyone but make it a meme, okay? And it's like a very inappropriate thing to say. Like, for example, if you've been laid off, you don't deserve a role, because like you wouldn't be laid off if you wouldn't be programmer, for example, right? Like,
Yeah,
you've
that's
been
crazy.
laid off because you're like not that good, basically, right?
Yeah.
And it's a real life conversations, and I actually hear that from people. But nowadays, I'm not mentioning names. I'm not saying where I heard it. Okay, who told me this? I'm just making jokes out of it and doing it
Yeah.
this way.
I think you bring up an interesting point to something that I've noticed lately, and that here in the States, there's this whole Doge thing where they're going through the American government and they're just firing people, and a lot of the conversation around that is we fired them because they were low performers. They weren't doing their jobs properly. And then there's time and time again, you hear stories from these people saying, that's not true. My last performance review, I got great scores. So there's no way that I'm being fired because I'm not good at my job, because my supervisor in the review process told me that I'm doing a good job, and there's a record of it, right? And then I know not long after that stuff started, I noticed that there was also, Meta did a bunch of layoffs. And I think there was a similar thing that happened where they sort of said, oh yeah, these are our lowest performers. And I thought that was really weird that some of these bigger entities like Meta and the US government are now putting out things like that are calling out layoffs as performance based. And I mean, I can't speak to what kind of data Meta might have on their employees' performance and those kinds of things, but I feel like it's a good time to sort of say, reminder to everybody, just because you get laid off does not mean you did a bad job. It does not mean you're bad at your job. It does not mean that you should leave the industry and never come back. It is True. Just like with recruiting itself, it's a numbers game. That's what it comes down to. I've been laid off a couple of times in my career now, and it's not fun. It's the worst, but it is very important to keep top of mind, if that's you, that it's not your fault and you didn't do a bad job. It's just layoffs happen and they suck. And everybody right now in the games industry that has the ability to lay somebody off all of a sudden seems to be thinking, oh, hey, what's the deal with laying people off? That sounds fun, and then they're just going for it. So it's bizarre. But anyway, I just felt like that made me think of that, and seemed like a good point to throw that in. But
100%.
But so another, we'll just go. I'm gonna basically this show just go down through all of your LinkedIn posts that I really like, and let's talk about all of them. Right? But, I mean, I'm kidding, but you did post something. I want to say it was a week or so ago, something like that. But you posted something on LinkedIn that I really found interesting about how you went through the initial phases of the Scientology recruitment process because you were new to recruiting, and at the time you wanted to get a sense of how different organizations do it. Which I think is really cool, because I'm kind of like that myself. If I'm trying to learn something, or get better at something, I find that just immersing yourself in whatever it is a great way to do that. Learning, going to sort of extremes, you could argue, is a great way to really learn a ton in a really quick period of time. But anyway, like, what gave you the idea to try that, and what was it like?
Thank you for asking this, because a lot of people might get it wrong, like as if I'm Scientologist or I love cults. No, actually, you said it right. I was just starting in recruitment. It was under a year that I was working in recruitment back then. And I was actually trying to make my first placement very quickly, like try to achieve that KPI that was set by Datascope, actually. I'm not going to say Scientology helped me to achieve it. They didn't. But I achieved it anyway, but I was very interested in how everyone's doing it in various industries, in various sectors. I went through recruitment multiple times in security, right? Because I was a contractor as well in security field, physical security, close protection, etc. So I know in general, if it's mass recruitment or security or army recruitment, how it's done, right? How it's done properly. I know how it's done properly from government perspective, from bigger organizations, smaller organizations, small business, because I've done recruitment for my own family business for a long time. So I knew it all. I didn't know it all, but I could understand it. What I couldn't understand, right, is how does cults doing it, like, or organizations that perceived or could be a cult, or at least have that kind of vibe to it or history. And the only place I could think of from the top of my head was Scientology, okay, because I was in London. If I would be in Russia, for example, I would go to something else. I wouldn't go to Scientology. But in London, I thought the best place to go is Scientology, because they still have like a main office and they're like big. They're supposed to be big.
Yeah, they're easily accessible, and they will be more than happy to see you coming. Right?
Exactly. Yes, and I loved it. So I went there. I thought, okay, so it should be a completely different story, right? Because they start with a test and everything, and like it should be some sort of, they're supposed to tell you something that you don't know and you want to do it, and they didn't. So I went
about
there.
yourself, by the way,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
you're like
yeah,
I've
yeah.
been in this body for decades, and you're gonna
Yeah.
suddenly tell me all these things I don't know. But
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. I want to say that they are partially failed, unfortunately, because my results, and I know my personality quite well. If I help people, it's not because I love people so much, and why I'm ethical as well, is because it makes me feel good. And I am pretty open about it, okay? If I help someone and they're happy, that makes me feel good. That's why I do it. I'm not doing it from the best intentions,
yeah,
but I'm
that's fair.
still doing a good thing. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely.
So,
I think you touched on something interesting there too, because it's sort of sometimes when you're in these roles, and I kind of feel the same way as someone that's a community manager. I've got a community manager by trade, and so I totally get where you're coming from on that. It kind of feels like sometimes that you should have. There's not that there's an expectation necessarily externally, but maybe you expect from yourself that, oh, I'm doing this because I love people and I want to help people and things like that. And yeah, you're right. Like ultimately, feeling good from helping people is enough. It's
yeah,
not that you have to. It's not that you have to be focused on I'm going to help every single person, no matter who they are, no matter how much of a pain in the ass they might be, no matter what their intentions are. It doesn't have to be that sort of black and white. It really can just be, it's because I enjoy doing it because I enjoy it. That's the reason.
Exactly, and it makes me feel good, and they're happy, and I'm like, it's a win-win basically. But
Yeah.
because of that trait, right? When I was doing their test, in reality, I was high achiever in everything, apart from the fact that I was argumentative, and I was like, well, yeah, obviously, like I'm critically thinker, like. If I
Right.
speak to candidates, right, I have to be on daily basis because I need to understand if it's BS or not, and I also need to understand if they could be a good fit or not. And I don't have time to sit there and hold people, etc. I can just say no because it's so and so, and you have to be critical. But that was minus on my scale in Scientology, and another one was that I don't like. I'm not kind enough from the depths of my heart. I'm not altruistic. That was the
Oh
word
yeah,
that is used.
I can imagine why they wouldn't like those two qualities. Critical
Exactly.
thinker
Yeah,
and not altruistic.
exactly. And I was like, okay, to be fair, and we had a very long conversation because you have to do an interview with them, and it's a 1 hour interview. And I was like, you understand that this is my personality, and from my perspective, what you're telling me that I have to be altruistic, you can see that in everything else I'm high achiever, and I'm also quite smart, I guess, and educated, as you said. So why would I want to be altruistic? Like, what does it give me? You say I'm egocentric, and you say that I'm basically not a very nice person, but why would I want to be nice if I'm not nice by nature? Like, it doesn't make sense. Why do I want to work on myself in this? What
Yeah.
does it give me? And they were
Right.
like, well, it's just you have to be like this. And I was like, I don't want it. Like, it's not attractive. I don't want to be nice just
Okay.
because you want me to be nice. So it didn't work out because they wanted to sell me a course that is basically to improve my personality so I can become altruistic. But I'm not gaining anything from it. They're supposed to sell me something that helps me, right? Usually they sell you self-confidence or communication skills, for example, and they tell you you're unsuccessful and you don't have a job that you want because so and so. But you can't really say you're unsuccessful or you're not having placement because you're not altruistic. That's absurd. So it didn't work out between me and them, and I got very
What a
upset as
shame.
well.
What a
Yeah, I
shame.
know, I know, I know. But they're nice
That
people.
must have been so wild. Yeah, and by the way, your post was very detailed, and I encourage anybody listening to connect with Anna on LinkedIn and search down through and find the post because you included a lot of detail, and it was really interesting, especially the fact they are they still to this day checking in every so
Yeah.
often and all. Yeah, and that doesn't really surprise me at all. That story is wild. I mean, I love the idea of again, I call things like that extreme. Not that they're extreme and crazy. Like why would you do this? But I mean that from the standpoint of like that's not the kind of thing that most people would think to do.
Yeah.
Like it's a sort of it's a little bit of an outlier idea. Like oh hey, I've just moved into this new sector of work and I'm gonna go see how Scientology does it. Like why not? It's just it's so out of left field, and I love that about it. That's my favorite thing about it is just it's like, how did you think of that? It's like I mean, what gave you the idea in the first place? And was there anything that happened that sort of gave you that idea of, oh, I'm gonna go see how Scientology does recruiting, or did it just like, do you remember what that was like? Just kind of thinking about that and having that idea.
Do you know what? I think I watched that documentary on Netflix about another country or something country. It's about also a cult that emerged in 60s, 70s. It's with the guru who had his own center in India.
Yes. And now I think there's I don't know if it's the same guy, but there's also a guru that has like there's like a whole town in Utah or Colorado or something like that is basically based around maybe the same thing you're talking about. And the guys passed away years ago, but the town is still there. The town is still there, and they're still very much like it's. I watched a YouTube video about it recently where these two guys kind of just went there to check it out, and of course you're thinking, be careful guys, be careful boys, but anyway, so
that was the one. And then I think obviously I was watching, and it's a very long documentary, it's like 5 or 7 episodes, something like this. I think Oshi, his name, or Oshu, something like that, I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember.
I can't remember what his name was. I can't remember.
But because it was so long and I could see the intricacies and how many people were involved and how the recruitment was happening, I was like, okay, so the whole point, it's a pyramid scheme, right? So it's a recruitment. Like, you cannot operate or do anything unless you're constantly recruiting people. So in their core business, recruitment is the main part. And I thought, okay, so who else in their core business, recruitment is the main part? I don't want to go to Herbalife. I don't think it even exists. Or somebody small. So I thought, okay, Scientology is like the biggest one. And they had an office not far as well. It was convenient for me to travel.
Yeah, that works. That's always good. That works out. Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago I was in LA for work for some reason, and I think I happened to drive by the Scientology Center, like the Celebrity Center out in Hollywood, and it was wild. It was a crazy huge building that just had like Scientology on the side of it, and it was insane. One thing that I love to ask everybody on the show is 2-part question: what's your biggest piece of advice for job seekers, and then what's the biggest mistake that you see job seekers making?
Okay. Piece of advice is please ignore the conditions of the industry. When I say ignore, I mean your personal feelings about it, okay? Because especially right now in games industry, it is definitely numbers games, not like before, okay? It's actually numbers game now. And the biggest advice that any recruiter can give you is just don't give up and keep doing it and keep building those numbers, keep strategizing and keep working. Offer something new, something innovative, do different things when you apply to jobs, connect to different people and talk about it, and a lot of networking as well, right? And never blame yourself. It's not you who's the problem, okay? It's just conditions of the industry. And that's the biggest advice ever, because I see all the time, and that's what we're coming to the biggest mistake that I see people make nowadays in games industry when they're applying for jobs, is that they think that they can do something magical that can correct the situation they're in. So maybe it's my CV, or maybe it's cover letter. Maybe I'm not connecting with the right people or not networking correctly. There is no such thing as magic pill. There's not one advice that somebody can give you and then you're going to get a job. It's just like recruitment from recruiter's perspective. You're going to do 10,000 different things, and one of them can work straight away, and another can never work, and another can work only after like 6 months of you doing it. But that's exactly why you should be doing all of it at the same time. Okay, we are not good at everything we do. Some of us has worse CV, some of us better at writing covering letters, some of us better at applying to jobs, some of us are worse at the interview. But you have to do all of these things to make it happen, right? And there is not one single thing that you should be doing to make it happen, if it makes sense. Like,
no, absolutely.
You just have to try everything and keep doing it.
That's the biggest thing for me that I've found in the past too, is that it's so easy to get discouraged but you have to keep going, because it really is just a matter of time. And you hear that a lot when you're laid off, and you're kind of like, well, yeah, but I'm trying this and I'm doing that, and this is a nightmare, and it is. But eventually something happens and something works out, and it's just a matter of really finding those roles that are right for you, and networking your butt off and getting your foot in the door however you can. And I agree too. I think once you've got your CV and your resume sort of worked out, like once you know, for me, I got my CV worked out at a certain point, and I kind of knew, okay, my resume is the problem here isn't, my resume. The problem isn't that I'm interviewing poorly, although just like anybody, I would have a bad interview here and there, right? But and I'm getting interviews, which is great. A lot of people were having that issue, but sometimes there are so many pieces that have to perfectly fall into place, and it just takes time. It really does.
100%. It's a Titanic effect. Yeah, 100%. People think that Titanic sank because of the iceberg, right? Titanic didn't sink because of the iceberg. It sank because of multiple things that happened prior to that, during the actual trip, and iceberg was the last drop, right?
Yeah.
But there were a lot of things that happened in between and before that, and the fire that happened at the lower parts of the ship that actually made the part of the ship much weaker than it's supposed to be, that it would hold in any other way. So it's a lot of things that happened, and it's just, it is what it is at the end of the day, and that's how it sank. So the same with job, or the same with actually placement if you're a recruiter. If you're a recruiter, you learn pretty quickly in the first, let's say, 3 to 6 months that you just have to try absolutely everything. If you want a new client, or if you want to make a placement, you have to try everything, because you don't know exactly what's actually going to work and when. So just keep doing it, and even if it's not working, just keep doing it. It doesn't matter. Just keep doing it.
Yeah, what doesn't feel like it's working for one person or one company may end up working for the next one. You just never know.
Yep, 100%. Yeah.
So as we sort of wrap things up here, where can people connect with you and learn more about what you're up to?
Just LinkedIn, honestly. I've tried to expand to other social media, but it has to be different content for everything. So I'm like, I'm just LinkedIn.
That's what I figured. Again, guys, if you're not connected with Anna, or at least following her on LinkedIn, make sure you do that, because again, I feel like I've gotten really lucky with my guests on the show so far, right? And so I feel like I'm saying this every episode, but tons of great advice, great insights, and well worth the time to check out and follow. So highly recommend, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Anna. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you, and we'll have to definitely stay in touch and do it again soon.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, everybody, that's going to about do it for this episode. Thank you again so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this. It goes a long way to helping the show, and I really appreciate it. So with that out of the way, keep pushing. Have a great next couple of weeks, and we will talk to you soon.